there's a such thing as a good airplane and a bad airplane. And I think all of us that have sat on one knows that. None of us want to get on a bad airplane because if you do, you might die. And that's the same thing with money. There's a such thing as a good one and a bad one. If you store your wealth in a bad one, it gets inflated, it gets debased, and when you go want to buy a house, want to buy a car, you realize you can't afford it. And so I really think that Bitcoin is the best money that we know. And it's the equivalent of I want to ride the best airplane. I want to live in the best house. It's a performance technology to solve a very specific problem.
Bitcoin has officially become the 5th largest asset in the world, and according to Jack Mallers, it's just getting started. Far from being a speculative tool, Bitcoin is now absorbing $2.5 trillion in global value, positioning itself as the next great reserve asset, potentially eclipsing gold. Mallers argues that Bitcoin isn't just a currency or investment. It's a technological force capable of devouring Wall Street, disrupting central banks, and overtaking nation-states. As economic instability rises and fiat systems falter under mounting debt, Bitcoin is increasingly viewed as the most rational escape hatch. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about sovereignty, logic, and economic survival. In this video, we analyze Jack Mallers' compelling argument for why Bitcoin is the only money that makes sense in the modern age, and why Ethereum and other digital assets remain secondary in a world where money sound wins.
Subscribe to Daily Bitcoin Trends for expert insights, real-time market updates, and proven crypto strategies. No hype, just smart analysis to help you make better decisions in crypto.
Bitcoin now is the 5th largest asset in the world, soon to be the 2nd behind gold. And there's no reason it can't be larger than gold because it's a better money than gold. And that to me is the story. That's a signaling that more of the world's contributions, value we're all creating, is picking Bitcoin as the tool to store, right? It's now storing $2.5 trillion worth of human value, and it's bringing it with us tomorrow. That's the story. And whether people, to buy a house, sell the Bitcoin for a second for dollars and then write a check, or whether the home seller accepts Bitcoin, who cares? I mean, inevitably, we won't, need fiat currencies, but speculating on when that will be, I just don't think it's that important of an issue contrasted against the concept that we have such a powerful money that's performing at 50% year over year on average and is literally conquering financial markets that stand in its way. That to me is the story. Bitcoin has found a way to suck in liquidity and conquer Wall Street, government and nation states, tech companies, San Francisco and Silicon Valley, emerging markets throughout Latin America and Africa. I think what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. is the latest iteration of this idea that Bitcoin doesn't need you, you need Bitcoin. Donald Trump has benefited tremendously when it comes to winning an election for Bitcoin. Stablecoins are new ways for them to finance the fiscal deficits of the U.S. and find liquidity and people that are willing to buy U.S. debt. It's a huge reason that they're interested in stablecoins. They need a neutral reserve asset that the dollar can be debased against and that they can stockpile in the face of what is reorganized global capital flows, trade wars with China, a really interesting relationship with Russia. I mean, assets like gold and like Bitcoin are unique and going to play an increasingly important role. So my broad stroke opinion is this thing, whatever it touches, it conquers. Washington, D.C. is the latest chapter in a broader story that is a good money. It's now the 5th largest asset in the world, soaks in and attracts all the liquidity that kind of radiates within its atmosphere. I think Bitcoin brings back common sense, fundamentals, logic to an industry that's gotten immensely complex. In order to retain your purchasing power, you used to have to get your paycheck, open your brokerage account, and understand what did the Japanese central bank monetary policy say, and what's the Fed's expectation of rate cuts in 19 months. You don't have to do that anymore. The idea is pretty simple. The U.S. is in a tremendous amount of debt. Traditionally, there's 2 options for us normal folk. 1, you could pay it back like an honest person. 2, you could call your buddy and say, I default. I'm sorry. I hope you'll still be my friend, but I can't afford to pay it back. Now, the US government conveniently has a 3rd option that none of us do. They can print what they owe. They can devalue the debt itself. And so if it's a multiple choice question, it's pretty obvious which one you circle, the latter. they're going to continue to debase and print what they owe. The United States of America cannot default, and they also mathematically cannot afford to pay the debt back. And so no matter how you slice it, no matter how many economics classes you take at Harvard, the reality is they're going to find ways to print more money, to increase the liquidity and debase the dollar. And for that reason, the 60-40 portfolio is going to increasingly look bleak. Bonds are going to continue to perform poorly, and anything that is scarce and that is hard against an ever increasing pool of US dollars is going to perform the greatest. So Bitcoin is very unique in that it used to be, well, not everyone has access to the beachfront property that's really scarce. Not everyone has access to the blue chip tech companies in Silicon Valley that perform the best, but everyone does now have access to the scarcest thing any of us can own. And so my thesis again is very simple. Common sense, logic, bringing things back to 2 + 2 = 4 is there's no other way out except devaluing the currency. And so own the scarcest thing you can and keep it simple, which is Bitcoin. And, that's worked for me for 13 years. And, I'd bet a decent amount of money it'll work for the 14. Bitcoin equals fiat liquidity plus technology. It's a very simple idea that if you believe technology will continue to improve the world and that the story of humanity is engineering a better world, and you believe that there's going to be more fiat existing in the future than there is today, governments and central banks will continue to print money and run deficits, Bitcoin is the best way to express that idea. It's the best way to monetize that future. And so for me, Bitcoin's price appreciation is largely centered around is the technology continuing to innovate and disrupt existing industries, and our governments and central banks continuing to debase currency and print money. Bitcoin's been the best expression of currency debasement. It's been the best barometer or index for fiat liquidity globally. Over the next 12 to 18 months, I see a lot more fiat liquidity. I mean, we've heard that the Genius Act unlocks $3.5 trillion worth of liquidity from banks and capital accounts at the Fed. We know Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac wants to come back into the private markets. We know that there's over $7 trillion in money market funds. And people have to remember that prices are set at the margin. If someone wants to buy one Bitcoin and no Bitcoiner is willing to sell them a Bitcoin unless it's $500,000 per Bitcoin, well, guess what? The price of Bitcoin is now $500,000. And what people have to remember is that with such a scarcity, with such an asset that carries such scarce dynamics, no amount of demand can create more supply. Everyone wanted an iPhone, Apple can just make more iPhones. That's why the price is not as volatile and as surprising to the upside, because they can make more. If everyone wants a Bitcoin, we can't make any more. And so to get your Bitcoin, you have to go higher in the market. Hey, is there enough Bitcoin for me at 120,000? No. How about 130? How about 140? How about 150? And so prices are set at the margin. And so if we see $10 trillion of liquidity in the US financial system alone, not to mention economies like China, Japan, that are equally in trouble or sometimes more, I think that the scarcest asset in the market will have a very violent reaction to the upside, and the marginal price that we'll see could be very high. That's typically how this asset responds to global liquidity.
Mahlers dismantles the complexity of today's financial world with brutal clarity. The US is drowning in unpayable debt, and the only solution is relentless money printing. Unlike fiat, Bitcoin is hard-capped, uninflatable, and incorruptible. As central banks scramble to inject liquidity, Bitcoin becomes the ultimate barometer of global monetary debasement. Ethereum, while powerful as a tech platform, doesn't compete on the same monetary playing field. Bitcoin's value proposition is singular and unmatched. It's the one scarce asset accessible to everyone, everywhere. With over $7 trillion in money market funds and trillions more in unlocked liquidity, Mahlers predicts a violent price reaction. Since Bitcoin's supply cannot be increased, the price is set at the margin. And as demand rises, so will price, potentially to $500,000 or more per coin. The simplicity is profound. If you believe fiat will continue to inflate and tech will advance, Bitcoin is the best way to monetize that future.
I think people need to understand that money is the market good that you acquire not to consume it. And that sounds like economic literature, so let me explain. A cheeseburger I acquire to put in my belly and eat it to get calories. An airplane I acquire to fly me somewhere. A house I acquire to consume and live in it because I don't want to be homeless. But money, uniquely, I do not acquire to eat it, to fly it, to live in it. I actually acquire it to save it and then later exchange it for the things that I need. And that's not Bitcoin specific or dollar specific. Money is a technology that we invented, just like an airplane, to do a specific thing within the marketplace. It was to solve for barter. Like, Jenny, if you did this podcast and you had to barter, you'd go to Whole Foods and say, hey, I just recorded an episode with Jack, and here's the audio. I'll take 2 ribeyes. And they say, I don't accept your podcast audio for steak. Sorry, go home. And so we invented money so that you can work really hard at Schwab Network and you get money in return for your time, your energy, your effort, your labor. And then you can save the money and then later exchange it for the things that you want in your life, like rent, like food, like gas, like travel. So in my opinion, Bitcoin is the latest technology to solve this problem that we call money, which is how can I exchange my effort, my work, my contributions to those around me and to the larger society in something that will persist through time. It won't get inflated. It won't get degraded. It's divisible. It's portable. And it's a large problem today because every major currency, including the US dollar now, is getting actively debased. The fiscal situation in America, we're living through one of the more challenging times in monetary policy. The Fed is, Jerome Powell's fired, they're not fired, and everyone's yelling at each other. And so whether you know it or not, you are a speculator. When you get up and you work hard for those around you in this world, it is a challenge to persist that effort through the future and bring it with you tomorrow. And so I carry the opinion that Bitcoin is the best in the world at performing what money is intended to be. And the last thing I'll say, there's a such thing as a good airplane and a bad airplane. And I think all of us that have sat on one knows that. None of us want to get on a bad airplane because if you do, you might die. And that's the same thing with money. There's a such thing as a good one and a bad one. If you store your wealth in a bad one, it gets inflated, it gets debased. And when you go want to buy a house, want to buy a car, you realize you can't afford it. And so I really think that Bitcoin is the best money that we know. And it's the equivalent of I want to ride the best airplane. I want to live in the best house. It's a performance technology to solve a very specific problem. I believe that Bitcoin is the only money in this crypto industry. Everything else is a technology that's trying to decentralize dentistry or decentralized art and NFTs. And that's all fine and great. I personally don't see the value accrual narrative to these coins and tokens. I honestly believe that they are technologies where a founding group can print a lot for themselves and then they pay influencers and other ways to monetize it by selling it to retail. I consider it an arbitrage on the trend. But even if you were to give the benefit of the doubt to these technologies and say, man, what if one of these technologies did become the next Apple computer? Well, Apple computer is worth about $3 trillion. It's worth about as much as Bitcoin is today. For me, Bitcoin is going after being a hard sound money in society, which gold is already worth over $20 trillion. And the market size for humans that are storing value is about $400 to $500 trillion in purchasing power today. So I think Bitcoin is an order of magnitude larger in its ambition, larger in its scope. The problem it's trying to solve is far more larger. Like if you were to say Ethereum is going to accomplish everything that Amazon has and a little more, which I would say there's no chance. And I haven't seen any evidence that they will come even close, but let's say they will. You're talking about, okay, a $2 trillion technology.
For Jack Mallers, Bitcoin isn't just better money. It's the best technology for preserving human effort through time. He likens money to a tool we invented to solve barter, and Bitcoin, being divisible, portable, and incorruptible, is the best iteration of that tool yet. The US dollar, like every major fiat currency, is collapsing under the weight of policy dysfunction and debt. And while Ethereum and altcoins attempt to build decentralized tech ecosystems, none match Bitcoin's mission to become the global store of value. Even if Ethereum becomes the next Amazon, a stretch, Mallers argues, it's still targeting a smaller prize. Bitcoin, by contrast, is after a $400 to $500 trillion market, the sum total of all preserved human value. In a world of speculation, manipulation, and debasement, Bitcoin is clarity, it's truth, and most importantly, it's the escape route. Own Bitcoin, because everything else is just noise.